Commander Thexler of the Vorthian Empire stood in the observation chamber of his flagship. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he watched the data streams flow across the holographic display. For 3 standard galactic cycles, his fleet had engaged the humans in what should have been a simple conquest. The Vorthians had conquered 47 species. They had never failed. But the humans were different. "Show me the combat data from the Nexus Prime engagement again," Thexler ordered his science officer, a thin creature named Kelvash. The hologram shifted to show the battle. Vorthian forces had landed on the human colony world with overwhelming numbers. 5,000 elite warriors against a garrison of 300 human soldiers. The mathematics were simple. Victory should have taken less than a single rotation. It took 47 rotations, and the Vorthians lost. "Explain this to me," Thexler said, his voice carrying confusion and something he had never felt before in battle: doubt. Kelvash pulled up biological scans of captured human soldiers. "Commander, we have studied their physiology extensively. What we found defies our understanding of carbon-based life forms." "Speak plainly." "They should not be able to do what they do." Kelvash magnified a scan of human muscle tissue. "Their bodies are inefficient by galactic standards. They require constant hydration, regular nutrition, and extensive rest cycles. Their bones break under modest pressure. Their skin offers almost no protection." Thexler waved a clawed appendage impatiently. "I know all this. This is why we expected easy victory." "Yes, Commander, but we failed to account for something our models could not predict." Kelvash brought up combat footage. A human soldier appeared on screen. The soldier had been shot through the leg by a Vorthian plasma bolt. The wound was severe. Any Vorthian warrior would have collapsed or died from shock. The human crawled forward, dragging the ruined leg behind them. They reached a fallen weapon, lifted it, and continued firing at advancing Vorthian troops. For 6 more hours, this human fought. Only when blood loss finally rendered them unconscious did they stop. "They do not stop," Kelvash said quietly. "We have analyzed hundreds of engagements now. Humans continue fighting through injuries that would incapacitate any known species. They fight without food for days. They fight without sleep for even longer. They fight when every logical calculation says they should surrender or die. There must be an explanation. Perhaps they have some biological mechanism we have not discovered." "We performed detailed autopsies on deceased human combatants." Kelvash paused. "Commander, there is no hidden mechanism. There is no secret organ that allows them to do this. Their bodies are exactly as fragile as our initial scan suggested." "Then how?" "We believe it is their minds, Commander. Their psychology allows them to override their body's limitations. They can choose to ignore pain. They can choose to keep functioning when their biological systems are failing. They have a concept they call willpower that we have no equivalent for." Thexler walked to the observation window. Stars drifted slowly past as the fleet moved toward the next engagement zone. He had led campaigns against species with superior technology and greater numbers. The Vorthians had always won because they were methodical, patient, and efficient. But efficiency meant nothing against an enemy who refused to acknowledge defeat. "There is more, Commander," Kelvash said reluctantly. "Tell me." "The humans have a history of this behavior. Before they achieved space travel, they fought wars among themselves." Kelvash brought up images and text translations. "In one conflict they call the First World War, human soldiers lived in trenches filled with mud for years. They suffered from diseases, malnutrition, and constant bombardment. Millions died, but they kept fighting." The next image showed a frozen landscape. In another conflict, their soldiers marched through frozen wastelands for months. Their bodies froze. Their supplies ran out. They ate their own dead to survive, and still they fought. "This is not rational behavior," Thexler said. "No, Commander, it is not, but it is effective. The door to the observation chamber opened, and Admiral Vorksthen entered. The Admiral was old, his carapace scarred from centuries of combat. He had overseen the conquest of 30 species personally. "I have received the casualty reports from the Nexus Prime campaign," Vorksthen said. "We lost 12,000 warriors attempting to subdue 300 humans. The final 30 humans held a defensive position for 9 days without food or water. When we finally breached their position, the remaining 23 killed another 600 of our warriors before they were overwhelmed. 23 wounded, starving humans killed 600 Vorthian warriors." "Yes." Vorksthen moved to stand beside Thexler at the window. "I have seen courage and I have seen desperation, but I have never seen anything like humans." "What do you recommend, Admiral?" Vorksthen was quiet for a long time. "I recommend we reconsider this campaign entirely. Breaking their military forces will not lead to surrender. Occupying their planets will not pacify them. Our standard methods of conquest assume that enemy populations will eventually accept defeat when resistance becomes too costly. Humans do not seem to make that calculation. The High Council will not accept withdrawal. Then the High Council should come here and fight the humans themselves." Kelvash cleared his throat nervously. "There is one more piece of data. We intercepted communications from the human military command. They know they are outnumbered. They know our technology is superior. They know that by any rational measure they should surrender. And they have no intention of surrendering. Their message to their troops was simple: hold until relief arrives or hold until death. There is no other option." Kelvash's voice dropped. "Commander, they mean it. Every single one of them means it." Thexler stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies waited. Human soldiers prepared their defenses. Human commanders studied Vorthian tactics and planned their resistance, and none of them expected to survive, but that did not matter to them. Everyone surrendered eventually. That was how the galaxy worked. Creatures fought to survive, and when survival became impossible, they yielded. Except humans. "Prepare the fleet for the next engagement," Thexler finally ordered, "and double our troop deployments." But even as he gave the order, doubt gnawed at him. How many Vorthian lives would it cost to break an enemy who could not be broken? The colony world of Haven's Rest had been established 70 years ago by human settlers seeking a quiet life. Now it burned. Colonel Sarah Chen stood on the roof of the colony's administrative center, watching Vorthian dropships descend through the smoke-filled sky. Her garrison consisted of 400 soldiers, most of them young recruits who had never seen real combat. Against them came an estimated 30,000 Vorthian warriors. "Colonel, the evacuation ships are away," Lieutenant Park reported. His face was covered in soot and his uniform was torn, but his eyes were steady. "We got about 60% of the civilians out before their interdiction fleet arrived. And the other 40%. Hidden in the underground bunker complex beneath the mining district. The Vorthians don't seem to know about the tunnels yet." Sarah nodded. "Then we hold here and keep them focused on us." Park was quiet for a moment. "Colonel, I've run the numbers. Even with our defensive positions, we can't hold more than a few days against those numbers, and relief forces are at least 3 weeks away." "I know the numbers, Lieutenant." "Then what's the plan?" Sarah turned to look at him. Park was 26 years old. He had a wife and daughter on Earth whom he hadn't seen in 2 years. Now he was asking her to give him a reason to die. "The plan is simple," she said. "We make them pay for every meter. We hold every building, every street, every room until we can't hold anymore. And when we fall back, we make them pay again. And when we run out of places to fall back to, then we make them dig us out of the rubble with their bare claws." The first Vorthian assault came at dawn. They attacked with overwhelming force, expecting the human defenders to break quickly under the pressure. They had studied human physiology. They knew humans were fragile creatures who required regular rest and nutrition. They knew human bodies could only sustain combat operations for limited periods before exhaustion set in. What they did not know was that humans had been fighting losing battles since before they learned to walk upright. They did not know about Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held against a Persian army. They did not know about Masada, where Jewish rebels chose death over surrender. They did not know about the Alamo, Rorke's Drift, or Bostonia. They did not know that humans had turned last stands into an art form. Commander Thexler watched the assault from orbit, growing increasingly frustrated as the day wore on. His forces had breached the outer defensive perimeter within hours, as expected. But the humans had not fled or surrendered. Instead, they had fallen back to prepared positions and continued fighting. "Why are they not retreating to the bunkers?" he demanded. "Our scans show civilian populations hidden underground." Kelvash analyzed the tactical data. "Commander, I believe they are trying to draw our attention away from the bunkers. By engaging us in the city, they hope we will not search for the hidden civilians. But they must know this is a suicide mission." "Yes, Commander, they know." Thexler struggled to comprehend. In Vorthian military doctrine, soldiers were a resource to be used efficiently. Throwing away lives in a hopeless defense served no strategic purpose. But the humans were not surrendering. They were dying, one by one, and taking as many Vorthians with them as possible. "Commander," a communications officer interrupted, "we are receiving a transmission from the human commander." Thexler felt a surge of hope. Perhaps they were ready to negotiate. Put them through. The holographic display flickered to show a human female. She was dirty and tired, with blood streaking one side of her face. Behind her, Thexler could hear the sounds of combat. "This is Colonel Sarah Chen, Colonial Defense Force. Are you contacting me to discuss terms of surrender?" "No, Commander. I'm contacting you to make a counteroffer." "A counteroffer? You are in no position to make demands." "I disagree." Colonel Chen's eyes were hard despite her obvious exhaustion. "I've studied your previous campaigns. I know how the Vorthian Empire operates. You conquer through overwhelming force and then integrate the surviving population into your empire. Very efficient. You understand our methods, then?" "I do, which is why I'm telling you now that won't work with us. You can take this city. You can take this planet, but you will never conquer us. Every human you capture will resist. Every world you occupy will rebel. Every soldier you kill will be replaced by 10 more who hate you even more." "These are empty threats." "Are they?" Chen shook her head slowly. "Commander, your empire is 4,000 years old. Humans have been fighting each other for 200,000 years. War is in our blood. We've been perfecting it since before your species learned to make fire. This is foolish posturing. Your garrison will be destroyed within days." "Maybe, but here's my counteroffer, Commander." Chen leaned forward. "Walk away, take your fleet and leave this sector. Because if you don't, I promise you this, you will win this battle, but you will lose this war." The transmission ended. Thexler stood in silence. The human commander's words echoed in his mind. "Continue the assault," he ordered. "I want that city secured by tomorrow." But as his officers moved to comply, Thexler could not shake the feeling that he had just made a terrible mistake. Day 2 of the siege, and the humans had not broken. Colonel Chen's forces had fallen back to the city center, leaving traps and ambushes in their wake. Every street became a killing zone. Every building became a fortress. Vorthian warriors who had conquered dozens of species found themselves dying in unprecedented numbers against an enemy they outnumbered 75 to 1. On the ground, Private First Class Marcus Webb crouched behind a shattered wall, his rifle hot in his hands. He had been awake for 31 hours. His left arm was wrapped in bandages from a plasma burn that should have taken him out of the fight. He had eaten nothing but a single energy bar since yesterday morning. He had never felt more alive. "Movement right side," Sergeant Okonkwo whispered beside him. The sergeant was older, a career soldier who had seen action on 3 different worlds. Marcus spotted the Vorthian patrol moving through the rubble. 6 warriors, their armored forms picking carefully through the debris. He waited, tracking them with his rifle's scope. "Hold," Okonkwo murmured. "Let them get to the marker." Ahead, a piece of red cloth hung from a shattered window frame. When the Vorthians reached it, they would be directly over explosives buried beneath the street. The lead warrior stepped past the marker. "Now!" Marcus hit the detonator while opening fire. The street erupted, throwing Vorthian bodies into the air. His rifle cracked again and again, picking off survivors. It was over in seconds, 6 more aliens dead. "Move," Okonkwo ordered. "They'll have our position in 30 seconds." The squad displaced, falling back through pre-planned routes. Behind them, Vorthian response teams converged on their former position, finding nothing but empty shell casings and the bodies of their comrades. This had been the pattern for 2 days. Strike, withdraw, strike again. Never give the enemy a chance to bring their superior numbers to bear. Vorthian casualties had exceeded 4,000 in the first 48 hours. Human losses were heavy too, nearly 100 dead and twice that wounded, but the ratio was unprecedented. In the command bunker, Colonel Chen studied the tactical displays with burning eyes. She had not slept since the invasion began. "Colonel, we've got a problem," Captain Rodriguez reported. "Medical supplies are running critical." "Understood. Strip non-essential facilities. Use whatever we can improvise. Some of these wounded need proper surgery. Without supplies, they'll die." Chen closed her eyes briefly. She knew every name on the casualty list. How many? 15 critical. 15 soldiers who would die because they didn't have enough medical supplies. 15 more names to add to the list. "Do what you can," she said quietly. "That's all any of us can do." She thought about the 40% of civilians still hiding in the mines. 8,000 people sheltered in the dark tunnels while war raged above them. Every day her soldiers held out was another day those people survived. Yes, she decided, it was worth it. On the Vorthian flagship, Commander Thexler convened an emergency staff meeting. The casualty reports were staggering. "This is unsustainable," Admiral Vorksthan said. "At current attrition rates, we will lose half our ground forces before the city is secured." "What do you propose?" "Orbital bombardment, destroy the city from above." That would also destroy the civilian bunkers. Our directive is to capture human populations for integration, not exterminate them. Better to lose potential labor than continue losing warriors at this rate. Thexler considered the options. Orbital bombardment would end the battle quickly, but it would mean abandoning standard conquest protocol. There must be another way. The humans cannot sustain this resistance indefinitely. "Commander," Kelvash said hesitantly, "our analysis suggests that humans can push past their biological limits in ways we do not understand. They have documented cases of humans fighting for days without sleep, surviving on minimal resources. They call it second wind or adrenaline surge. How is this possible? We believe it is connected to their psychological makeup. Humans evolved as persistence predators on their homeworld. They hunted prey not by being faster or stronger, but by simply never stopping. This trait seems to have carried over into their approach to warfare." Thexler felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. "You are saying they are biologically designed to outlast their enemies?" "In a sense, yes. Their bodies are fragile, but their minds can push those bodies far beyond normal limits when motivated." "Increase ground force deployment by 50%, Thexler ordered finally. "Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we will break these humans." For the first time in his long career, Commander Thexler was afraid that the enemy might be right. Day 5, the humans still held. Colonel Chen's garrison had shrunk to less than 200 effective fighters. They had fallen back to the administrative complex, turning the building into a fortress. Every approach was covered by overlapping fields of fire. Every room was prepared for fighting. The Vorthians had tried 3 major assaults in the past 24 hours. Each time, they had been thrown back with heavy losses. In the makeshift medical bay, Private Webb sat with Corporal Jin, watching the older woman's shallow breathing. Jin had been hit by shrapnel during the second assault. The wounds weren't survivable without proper surgery. "You don't have to stay," Jin whispered. "Yes, I do." Jin managed a faint smile. "You're a good kid, Webb. Remind me of my son." "Didn't know you had a kid." "Back on Mars, he's 12 now, wants to be a pilot." Jin's eyes grew distant. "I was supposed to go home next month, promised him I'd be there for his birthday." Webb didn't know what to say. "When you get out of here," Jin continued, "find him for me. Tell him his mom loved him. Tell him she was thinking about him at the end." Webb's throat was tight. "I promise." Jin smiled again and closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. Webb sat with her until it stopped entirely. He picked up his rifle and headed back to the line. Commander Thexler studied the latest battle reports with growing disbelief. 5 days. 5 days against a garrison that should have fallen in hours. His forces had suffered over 12,000 casualties. "Commander, our estimates suggest they cannot withstand another major assault." "Finally, prepare the final assault. Commit all available ground forces. I want that building taken within the hour." Colonel Chen gathered her remaining officers in the command center. There were only 5 of them left. Around them, less than 100 soldiers prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Ammunition status. Critical, most rifles are down to partial magazines. No grenades, no explosives, no heavy weapons. Defensive positions. The East Wing is compromised. West Wing is the strongest, maybe 10 minutes of sustained assault before breach. 10 minutes, that was all they had left. Chen looked at the faces around her, tired faces, wounded faces, faces that knew exactly what was coming. "The civilians." Lieutenant Park answered, "Still secure in the bunkers, if we can keep them focused on us. Then the civilians might still have a chance." Chen nodded slowly. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make them come and get us. Every room, every hallway, every inch of this building. We fight until we can't fight anymore." No one protested. No one suggested surrender. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," Chen continued. "Those people in the bunkers are going to survive because of us. That's what we're fighting for. That's what we're dying for. Take your positions and give them hell." The final assault began at sunset. Vorthian forces surged toward the administrative complex from all directions. Plasma fire lit up the darkening sky as human defenders opened fire. In the West Wing, Sergeant Okonkwo directed his squad's fire with practiced calm. They were down to their last magazines. "Fall back to secondary positions," he ordered as the aliens breached the outer wall. In the East Wing, a young private named Santos held her position alone. Her rifle ran dry. She drew her sidearm. When that ran dry, she picked up debris and charged the advancing aliens. She killed 2 before they brought her down. In the command center, Colonel Chen monitored the battle as it collapsed around her. One by one, defensive positions went silent. "Everyone to the command center. We hold here." The survivors gathered around her, 37 soldiers. They formed a perimeter around the command center. Chen took her position at the front. Her rifle was nearly empty. Her body was failing, but her eyes were clear. The doors exploded inward. Vorthian warriors poured into the room, and the humans opened fire. The close quarters negated the aliens' numerical advantage. Humans and Vorthians died together in the smoke and chaos. Chen emptied her magazine, then used her rifle as a club. Beside her, Park fought with a knife. It lasted 7 minutes. When it was over, only 3 humans remained alive, all wounded beyond the ability to continue fighting. Colonel Chen was among them, plasma burns covering her torso. A Vorthian officer approached her. Through fading consciousness, Chen looked up at the alien and smiled. "You won," she whispered, "but at what cost?" The Vorthian officer looked around the room. Bodies of warriors lay everywhere. 12,000 Vorthian warriors had died to kill 400 humans. Commander Thexler received the victory report in silence. The battle was over. The human garrison had been destroyed. But it felt nothing like victory. Casualties: 15,247 warriors dead or wounded. The final assault alone cost us nearly 3,000. Against how many humans? Approximately 37 defenders in the last engagement. 37 humans, 3,000 Vorthian warriors. Thexler stood alone in the observation chamber. The battle was over. The war continued. But something had changed. The humans had lost the battle for Haven's Rest, but they had proven something in that loss. They could not be broken. In his private quarters, Thexler began composing his report to the High Council. Based on extensive analysis of human combat capabilities and psychology, I recommend immediate termination of offensive operations against human space. The cost of conquest exceeds any possible benefit. The humans cannot be defeated through conventional means. They can only be destroyed entirely, and such destruction would require resources the Empire cannot spare. I recommend a diplomatic solution. The response came 3 hours later. Recommendation denied. The campaign would continue. Biological impossibility, Thexler murmured to himself. That is what we called it, but we were wrong. It is simply human. For the first time in his long career, Commander Thexler began to understand that some wars cannot be won through strength alone. 3 months after the fall of Haven's Rest, the war continued. The Vorthian Empire had committed another 100,000 warriors to the human campaign. They had captured 12 more colony worlds, each victory more costly than the last. On the jungle world of New Queensland, a garrison of 200 humans held off 20,000 Vorthians for 3 weeks. When they finally fell, fewer than 50 Vorthians remained alive. On the ice moon of Frost's Edge, human miners turned their excavation equipment into weapons, fighting a guerrilla war through underground tunnels. On the garden world of Paradise, a Vorthian occupation force found itself under constant attack from human partisans who materialized from the wilderness, struck with lethal precision, and vanished. The reports piled up on Commander Thexler's desk. Human casualties were heavy, but human resistance never wavered. For every colony that fell, 2 more fortified their defenses. For every garrison that died, 10 more volunteers stepped forward. And the Vorthians kept dying. The Grand Overseer was an ancient Vorthian named Thexval, sent by the High Council to evaluate the campaign. He listened to the briefing in silence. "You are telling me that 400 human soldiers killed 15,000 of our warriors?" "Yes, Grand Overseer." "And this is not an anomaly, but a pattern?" "Yes, Grand Overseer." "And what do you recommend?" Thexler took a deep breath. "I recommend cessation of offensive operations and immediate diplomatic contact with human leadership. The humans cannot be conquered through military force alone. Their psychology does not permit surrender in the face of aggression." "You recommend the Empire negotiate with prey?" "I recommend the Empire recognize that humans are not prey. They are something we have never encountered before. An enemy who fights harder the more we push them, who grows stronger from every defeat, who cannot be broken through force alone." Thexval rose slowly. I have reviewed your reports. I have seen things I never expected to see. He walked to the observation window. When I was young, I believed the Empire was invincible, but I have lived long enough to know that nothing is eternal. He turned back. My recommendation is that we find a way to make peace with the humans before they find a way to make war on us. Because if what I have seen is any indication, the humans have not yet truly started fighting. I do not wish to see what they are capable of when they go on the offensive. 6 months later, the first human counterattack began. They struck without warning, appearing with a fleet that should not have existed. Human ships, built in secret shipyards, armed with weapons reverse-engineered from captured Vorthian technology. The Battle of Orion's Gate lasted 3 days. When it was over, the Vorthian Third Fleet had ceased to exist. In the months that followed, human forces pushed the Vorthian occupation back system by system. Every world that had been taken was liberated. The humans did not fight like the Vorthians. They did not seek to conquer. They fought only to retake what was theirs. Other species noticed. Species that had been conquered, integrated, broken. Species that had surrendered when resistance seemed hopeless. They began to remember. 1 year after the fall of Haven's Rest, the High Council summoned Commander Thexler. "You were right," the council speaker admitted. "We should have listened. The humans have offered terms. They want to negotiate." "What are their terms?" "Complete withdrawal from human space, return of all captured civilians, reparations for destroyed colonies, and one more thing, they want to meet with you specifically." Thexler thought of Colonel Chen, the human commander who had warned him. "I will meet with them." The negotiations took place on a neutral station. The human delegation was led by a young woman named Chen Weilin, Colonel Chen's daughter. "My mother spoke of you in her final transmission," she said. "She said you were the only Vorthian commander who seemed to understand." "I understood too late. Many died because of it." "Many died on both sides. That is war." Weilin's eyes were hard but not cruel. "My mother believed that if your people had approached us differently, we could have been allies rather than enemies." Perhaps she was right. Weilin slid a data pad across the table. "These are our terms. They are not negotiable, but they are not punishment. We want security, not revenge." Thexler read the terms carefully. They were harsh but fair. The humans wanted peace, not conquest. "I will recommend acceptance." The treaty was signed 3 weeks later. The Human-Vorthian War officially ended. Over 300,000 Vorthian warriors had died, along with nearly 100,000 humans. It was the costliest war in Vorthian history, and it was their first defeat. Years later, historians would ask, how had humans, by every measure a physically inferior species, managed to defeat a galactic empire? The answers varied. Military historians pointed to human tactical flexibility. Political scientists noted the decentralized nature of human government. Economists highlighted human ability to rapidly industrialize. But the Vorthian scholars who had lived through the war had a different answer. They spoke of the human paradox, the ability of humans to push beyond their biological limits through sheer force of will. Commander Thexler, in his memoirs, put it simply. "We studied human physiology and found them weak. We studied human technology and found it inferior. But we did not study human spirit, and that was our mistake." Humans do not fight because they think they will win. They fight because they believe some things are worth dying for. They fight for their families, their homes, their freedom. And they will keep fighting long after any rational calculation says they should stop. We called their endurance a biological impossibility. We were wrong. It was not biology that drove them. It was something deeper. Call it will, call it spirit, call it the human heart. Whatever you call it, it is real, and it is more powerful than any weapon we have ever faced. On the anniversary of the Battle of Haven's Rest, humans gather at a memorial built on the ruins of the administrative complex. The names of every soldier who died are carved into the stone walls. The memorial has a simple inscription. They may break our bodies, but they will never break our spirit. We are human. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We fight until we can't fight anymore, and then we fight some more. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. And that is who we will always be. In orbit above the planet, Vorthian ships now pass peacefully alongside human vessels. The two species trade, cooperate, sometimes even form friendships. The war is history. But the lessons remain. The Vorthian Empire never attempted another conquest after their defeat. The shock of failure changed their culture, forcing them to reconsider millennia of assumptions about strength and weakness. Other species took note. The 47 conquered peoples began to remember what resistance meant. Slowly, they started to push back against their occupiers, inspired by the example of a species that had refused to accept the inevitable. And humanity continued to spread among the stars. They were not perfect. Their history remained full of violence and flaws. But they were also capable of remarkable things, of courage in the face of impossible odds, of sacrifice for others, of the stubborn, relentless refusal to give up. Biological impossibility, the Vorthians had called it. But there was nothing impossible about it. It was simply human nature, the accumulated strength of 200,000 years of struggle and survival. Not because it was logical, not because it was efficient, but because it was who they were. Human. Forever.